What's up, YouTube? It's Joe Cattapolia sitting on the couch making some money investing in fractional real estate online. As usual, today is Friday, so it's time for this week's installment of the 52-week challenge. If you haven't been following along, that's when I tell you about all the fractional real estate that I bought this week and invite you to do the same. This is just our virtual accountability group. You can jump in the Discord, share it there. You can put it in the comments to this video. Or most people seem to want to DM me, and that's fine too. I think the more we do this publicly, though, the better off we'll all be. Sharing ideas and strategies and due diligence and what we're buying and why. Really just, my whole goal for having this channel is that we have, create a community where we're all helping each other and making the industry better. Before I forget, please like and subscribe. In the description of this video, I have links to all the places where I'm currently investing in fractional real estate online. Please do your own due diligence on all those platforms and any of the properties you see me talk about. Just because I'm investing on there and or buying a specific property or deciding not to buy a specific property doesn't mean that's the right answer for you. We're going to have different, risk preferences. We're going to have different time horizons, all sorts of reasons why I might want to buy something and you wouldn't. So please do your own due diligence. Also, in the description of this video is a link to that Discord channel that I just mentioned. There's about 270 of us now, people that are just there to talk about fractional real estate investing across a lot of different platforms. We have lots of active threads, so please feel free to join, ask questions, share information. If you do join, there is no cost. It's not a sales funnel. I will not DM you to try to sell you anything. If you get DMs from someone who looks like me, please report them to Discord, and you can also put it in our fraud thread. There have been some imposters trying to take advantage of people in our group. Okay, so back to everything I bought this week. And this has been a pretty slow week for me. I didn't spend a lot of time online. You can probably tell if you've noticed that I didn't put out a ton of videos. So I didn't buy a lot, but as I pretty much always do, I did pick up a couple of pieces of mortgages on ground floor. So 3 new LROs. I think I had 2 payoffs and 3 new loans. So I'm starting to burn through the cash again that I have in there. I had enough. I could have bought one more LRO if they had one. So at the moment, they're not putting them out any faster than they're paying off for me. So I haven't added anything new on here in a while. I still have the same number of extended loans just sitting there. These are pretty much all those ones that are over a year old now. And, I did a separate video about this. I think many of them should just be labeled as defaulted, even though none of them are at the moment. Let's go back to my closed loans. I don't know. This is freezing. I'm not sure why that's not. I'm just going to show you that, as I've mentioned many times in the past, I've had more that have been in the extended status that have paid off than were in performing. So I think they're just not fully utilizing these, and it kind of bothers me. Until I work through these ones, I'm not, eager to put a ton of new money on here. So just continuing to reinvest. And at the moment, they're not putting out a ton of LROs. At some point, I'll bump up how much I put in each one, provided that this clump of them moves along the way that I expect. Okay, then on Lofty, I bought a couple of shares of 9 Country Club Lane. This is the short-term rental in Briarcliff Manor, New York. It's the one that was recently featured on Staycation. These tokens are still just $20. I mean, there are some available right now for $20 as limit orders. In my mind, these are incredibly cheap. I think that it hasn't been cash flowing, but that's because a number of reasons. There's been work being done to get it ready to be on that show. There's been capex that's been spent. I think that I think that the decisions that are being made around this one are pretty smart. I like Earl, who's managing it. I think he's he does a good job with his transparency and has several properties that he's been managing on the platform for a while, with varying levels of success. But a lot of them he's picked up in already troubled situations. And then Noah, the co-owner on this, is really engaged in, I think, trying to do everything he can to make this work. So, well, I thought this was overpriced when it came to the platform at $50 per token. At 20, it's really hard for me to see how, it seems like the upside is, there's more potential upside than there is downside. And I want to actually dig into that a little bit, because I know I say that a lot. And in case you don't know, how I'm looking at these, I like to use this calculator a lot on Lofty Assist. And so, this is where, I took this estimate for this property, 1.933200, this price here. 1.9 million. I don't know why. I should have just stopped reading digits after that. Just put that price in this calculator. So I'm just on this property page, use the calculator. It automatically fills in the number of tokens. I didn't double check and make sure that's right. If I'm really spending a lot of time digging into this, that's one of the things that I normally do. I just put this together today as sort of an illustration. But before I did my initial purchase, this is the work. I like to see, okay, if we had to sell this, what does that look like? It just fills in a 9% total closing costs. I think 9% is a good conservative number when you have relatively cheap properties, because there are certain fixed costs that never go, that inflate that number. For a home of this price point, if we're actually selling it for $1.9 million, I don't think we're going to have $173,000 in closing costs. And, that does include commissions, but I don't think we'd be anywhere near that. But I still just leave this in because I'm just doing some guerrilla math, right? Like, that's my favorite thing to do. One, because anytime we're making some projections about the future, we're never going to be right. So trying to be precise sometimes, I think, is, one, it's an exercise in futility, but it's also, we can kind of trick ourselves into a false sense of security. And so that's why a lot of times when I'm doing this, I am just doing these sort of, rough estimates, because it does, I just think it's reality. Like, you can't be very certain about what's going on in the future. I didn't put anything in these other unpaid, outstanding property expenses. I'm sure that we have some. There's probably some right now if I go dig it up. Probably not as much as, probably it would just get absorbed in this larger number, right? I'm really just looking for rough numbers. And then again, it fills in the operating reserve and the debt balance itself too. So that's why I like this Lofty Assist calculator. I had been doing this a lot in Excel, but it just spits this out for me. So if it actually sells at the current Zestimate, which, by the way, is also the listing valuation, the valuation when it was listed. So there is or it's very similar to, it's not exactly, but so there is an appraisal out there that supports this as well. And for this type of property, I actually would rely on an appraisal much more than a lot of these third-party websites. But anyway, if it sells for that amount, that gives us a net proceeds of $34.68 per token. Well, if I'm buying them at 20 and then, plus expenses, it's okay, I'm getting up to $21.49 or whatever it is. That's $13 in upside, basically, right? Like, it looks like, and that's if, that's just from an equity perspective, right? That's not even factoring in that maybe this is actually going to start performing and pay us some cash flow over time, right? So that's where I see, okay, if we had to sell this because it doesn't, continues to not perform, well, I think we could see a big chunk of equity from that. And I don't have to get anywhere near 34 for me to be pretty happy about it, right? If it's 30, if it's 27, 28, and that happens in a reasonably, a relatively short period of time, well, then that would also be a decent win for me as well. But then, so I think that's a good idea of like maybe where the upside is in this, right? From an equity perspective. Again, I think a lot of the work being done is going to make this one, going to improve the yield over the long run too. I think there's some potential there. But especially on Lofty more than on any other platform. I'm very concerned about what happens if we have to sell this, because we've just been forced to do it on a lot of properties, or maybe not technically forced, but we've been in a situation where it's the only reasonable choice for us, or the only profitable choice. And so I like to look at that. But then if we look at both Redfin and Realtor, they both come in around 1.6 million. That one was a little bit higher. But so I did the same thing, right? I took those numbers, just put that value right into my sale price. And in that instance, you can see, okay, well, if that were the actual sale price, then I'm losing money, right? I get $15.77. But so, okay, I'm losing about $5 if this lowest price point ends up being the real number, or making 10 to, what did I say, 12 or $14. If it's on the higher end. And based on, me taking a look at comps, looking at the original appraisal, just doing some digging, I in my mind, I think the Zestimate is the closest one of these three to be the actual sale price if we went to sell this today. And I'm not an agent in that market, right? So my opinion of this is no different than anybody else's. I mentioned lots of times, if this were my market, right? If we were talking about properties in San Antonio, where I work every day with investment properties and short-term rentals, then maybe my opinion would be worth a little bit more. But this is just the way that I'm looking at it. I have access to all the same, third-party data that's available to everybody else. And so this is just, that's the way I'm looking at it. If you're going to invest in this one, you want to try to make those same determinations, right? I've heard plenty of people say, no, they think that this lower price is the real price. I'm not going to argue with them about it, right? If that's what you think it is, then don't buy this, because it doesn't make any sense, right? Like you're upside down day one. One of the things that I spent some time doing is just looking at this is just the Airbnb listing, right? And trying to look, okay, what does this property look like now? And then tried to compare it to some of the other comps that were out there that I think are being used to drive down these numbers, right? You can actually look at, okay, each one of these properties that it's using, it's using these comparable sales, and just really look at those. Think about, how does that property actually compare to our property? Maybe it's similar size, are the finishes the same? Once you get into these sort of higher end properties, it is, there's just a lot of variability, right? And it is, valuing them becomes more of an art than a science. You just sort of get a certain, I don't know, as far as there's just certain looks, certain quality of finishes, the style, the way, there's all these different things that come into play that will make someone pay significantly more for a similar sized home in one home versus another. And so it's not the same, which is why I say that I think I trust an appraiser much more than I trust a lot of these automated valuations, because it's, there's only so much data that they can pick up. And in a market like this, where you have a lot of unique homes that are not cookie cutter, that wasn't built out as a subdivision, there's a lot of different sizes, they have different amenities, they have different views. I think views come into play quite a bit. All of those things, lead me to believe that, yes, this higher price makes a lot more sense. And so anyway, that's all I really wanted to mention about this, is that, I always, when I'm telling you, hey, I'm buying this at $20, I'm not just sitting here thinking, oh, $20, it started at 50, that's a 60% discount. No, right? That's not the math I'm doing, because 50 was a made up number, right? It's not necessarily, a lot of the properties on Lofty were sold at $50, but nobody should have ever paid $50 for it. This one, I think I think of this one sort of the same way. I think that 50 was too much. although partially, one of the things is, if you buy a home in real life and then turn around and sell it, you're going to lose money, right? So just because we're going to net less, if you sell it immediately because of closing costs, right? The transaction costs just eat into it. And so that's part of what's going on here. But I really do think it is, I think it's more than that made me want to pay less for this. But again, at $20, when I do this math, I look at, okay, what do I think if I believe this number? And honestly, I think depending on the way the economy goes, the way interest rates go, all those sorts of things, this home, it seems to me that we, could be considerably more under the right set of circumstances in a relatively short period of time, because I think that design does a lot to create value, and so some of the redesign that they did with it, and also too, just getting some press like it did, I think has an impact on buyers in a way that, especially in a price point again where you have in types of home where you just have very you don't have pure true comps because it's not a cookie cutter neighborhood. You can really create value with these sorts of things in a way that you can't necessarily do in a more standardized area. So anyway, kind of a weird aside. I know usually I'm just talking about, what did I buy this week? I only bought a couple of things, right? And so I figured I'd share a little bit more about what I mean when I'm telling you. So in this scenario, I think the potential upside, just from an equity perspective, not even assuming we're going to turn this around and actually start making some money with it, but I think we stand to make maybe double what a reasonable loss might look like, right? Maybe 2 or 3 times, 2.5 times. So anyway, that is it for me for today. Hopefully that didn't get too rambly. I still didn't go to bed yet, and it's 9 in the morning, so sorry about that. Until next time, I'm going to just keep making mistakes so that you don't have to.